The radiator in my apartment hissed, clanked, and then died with a final, pathetic shudder. I sat on the edge of my mattress, wrapped in 2 blankets, watching my breath fog up in the air. It was mid-January in Chicago, and the temperature outside was 5 degrees below zero. Inside my apartment in Little Village, it wasn't much warmer. I reached for my phone, my fingers stiff with cold, and tapped the banking app. The screen loaded with a cheerful blue circle before displaying the number that dictated my entire existence. Available balance, $42.15. I stared at it. Payday was still 4 days away. That meant I had roughly $10 a day to cover gas for my beat-up Honda, food, and any unforeseen disasters. Clearly, fixing the heat was not in the budget. I sighed, the sound loud in the empty room, and shuffled to the kitchenette to boil water for instant ramen. Again. While the water heated up on the electric coil stove, I made the mistake of opening Instagram. The first story on my feed was from Layla. The photo was a close-up of a plate of truffle risotto, shaved black truffles piled high like a dark, expensive mountain. In the background, out of focus but unmistakable, were my parents, Franklin and Deidre. They were raising glasses of red wine, smiling that specific, relaxed smile that only rich people seem to possess, the smile of people who have never had to choose between heating and eating. The caption read, "Fueling up for rounds. So grateful for mommy and daddy treating me to the best Italian in the city. Hashtag Dr. Life, hashtag blessed, hashtag foodie." I felt a familiar, hot coal of resentment burn in my stomach, momentarily making me forget the freezing temperature of the apartment. We were 27 years old. We were twins. We had both graduated from the same medical school 6 months ago. We were both first-year residents. But looking at that photo, you would think we lived on different planets. I looked down at my block of dried noodles. Fueling up, I muttered to the empty room. This wasn't new. This was the pattern of our lives since we were toddlers. Layla was the delicate one, the one who needed soft fabrics because wool made her itch, the one who needed private tennis lessons because she got anxiety in groups. I was Rowan. I was the sturdy one. The one who didn't complain. I remembered when we were 10 years old, standing in the driveway of our parents' sprawling home in Naperville. Dad had come home with a brand new, pink bicycle with white tassels. For Layla, he had said, beaming. Because she kept her grades up. I got straight A's too, I had reminded him, holding my report card. I know, Rowan, Mom had chimed in, patting my head dismissively. But you're naturally smart. Layla has to try harder. We have to reward her effort. Besides, your cousin's old bike is still perfectly good. You're strong enough to pedal it, the chain is a little sticky, but you can handle it. I handled it. I always handled it. That was the curse of being competent. Now, 17 years later, nothing had changed. Layla was eating truffles in the Gold Coast while I was eating sodium-packed noodles in a drafty apartment with a broken heater. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Layla. Hey sis. Missed you at dinner. Mom said she didn't invite you because it was a last-minute thing and she knows you hate driving into the city when you're tired. The risotto was to die for. I stared at the message. I lived in the city. They were the ones who drove in from the suburbs. They were 10 minutes away from my apartment. I typed out a response, looks great. Enjoy. I deleted it. I typed, must be nice. I deleted that too. Finally, I just typed, glad you had fun. I put the phone down and poured the boiling water over the noodles. The steam hit my face, the only warmth I was going to feel tonight. I pulled my blanket tighter around my shoulders. I had a 14-hour shift in the ER starting at 6 in the morning. I needed to sleep. I needed to not think about the fact that my parents were currently paying for a dinner that cost more than my entire monthly grocery budget. I needed to survive. That was my job. Layla's job was to sparkle. My job was to survive. The emergency room at Chicago General Hospital didn't smell like antiseptic. It smelled of old blood, wet wool, and despair. It was 10 in the morning, and I had already been on my feet for 4 hours. My attending physician, Dr. Mercer, was barking orders near the nurse's station. Mercer was a short, angry man who believed that if residents weren't on the verge of a nervous breakdown, they weren't learning. "Collins," he shouted, not looking up from a chart. "Bed 4 needs a central line. Bed 6 is vomiting blood. And someone get the drunk guy in the hallway to stop singing show tunes." "Move." "On it," I said, my voice raspy. I grabbed a central line kit and sprinted toward bed 4. The patient was a 60-year-old construction worker with veins that had collapsed from dehydration. It was a difficult stick. I had to focus, blocking out the chaos around me, the screaming of a toddler in the waiting room, the constant beeping of monitors. I got the line in on the first try. A small victory. As I was stripping off my bloody gloves, I saw a flash of pristine white coat flutter past the ER doors. It was Layla. She didn't work in the ER. She was a dermatology resident. Her residency was famous for its lifestyle hours, 9 to 5, no weekends, no holidays. While I was wrestling with trauma cases and cardiac arrests, Layla was prescribing acne cream and doing Botox injections. She spotted me and waved, pushing through the doors. She looked infuriatingly fresh. Her white coat was starched and bright. Her hair was in a perfect blowout. She was holding a venti latte from the expensive coffee shop across the street. "Rowan." "Oh my God," she said, wrinkling her nose as she got closer. "What is that smell?" "It's called bodily fluids, Layla," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead with my sleeve. "What are you doing down here? Don't you have a mole to look at?" "I'm on my break," she said, taking a sip of her latte. "I just had the absolute worst morning. You won't believe it." I looked at her. I looked at bed 6, where a nurse was currently helping a patient who was hemorrhaging. "Try me." "So, I had this patient, right? Mrs. Halloway. She comes in for a cosmetic consult, and she starts yelling at me because her appointment was delayed by 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Can you imagine? I was so stressed I was literally shaking. I had to go meditate in the break room for 20 minutes just to center myself. I stared at her. I blinked slowly. "You meditated because a lady yelled at you?" "It's about boundaries, Rowan," Layla said, looking at me with pity. "You let this place get to you too much. You look exhausted. Are you even using that eye cream Mom bought you? You have bags under your eyes the size of suitcases." "I haven't slept more than 4 hours in a night for 3 weeks, I said, my patience fraying. "And I don't have time for eye cream. I have a patient in bed 8 who is homeless and has frostbite on 3 toes because he slept under a bridge last night." Layla sighed, checking her Apple Watch. "Always so dramatic. Anyway, I just came down to tell you that Mom and Dad are planning a big congratulations party for me next month." "Congratulations for what?" I asked. "We graduated 6 months ago. For finishing my first semester of residency without quitting." Layla beamed. "And, you know, just to celebrate my journey. It's going to be at the Palmer House. Black tie. You have to come. But maybe, buy a new dress? Or I can give you one of my old ones? That gray thing you wore to Christmas looked a little, thrift store." "It was from a thrift store," I said flatly. "Right. Well. Just try to look nice. For the photos." She tapped her watch again. "Oops, gotta run. My next patient is a VIP. Some senator's wife. Wish me luck." She bounced away, her perfect hair swinging. I watched her go, clutching her $6 coffee, completely oblivious to the fact that I was standing in a literal pool of blood. I turned back to the nurse's station and saw a pair of eyes watching me. It was Mr. Higgins, the homeless man from bed 8. He was sitting up, shivering despite the thermal blankets I had piled on him. "She seems nice," Mr. Higgins wheezed, his voice thick with pneumonia. She's my sister, I said, grabbing a fresh chart. Twin? Unfortunately. You got the short end of the stick, Doc, Mr. Higgins chuckled, then broke into a coughing fit. You have no idea, Mr. Higgins, I whispered. You have no idea. 2 weeks later, the universe decided that freezing my apartment wasn't enough punishment. It decided to take my car, too. I was driving home from a 30-hour shift. It was 7 in the evening, dark as pitch, and a blizzard was hammering Chicago. The snow was coming down in thick, heavy sheets, blinding me even with the wipers on full speed. I was on the I-55, inching along in traffic, when my Honda Civic gave a violent lurch. The engine sputtered, coughed, and then went silent. The dashboard lights flickered and died. No, I pleaded, hitting the steering wheel. No, no, no. Not now. Please not now. I turned the key. Nothing. Just a hollow click. I managed to coast the dying car onto the narrow shoulder of the highway. As soon as I stopped, the cold began to seep in. I pulled out my phone. 4% battery. Of course. I hesitated. I had no money for a tow truck. My credit card was maxed out from paying for my board exams. I had one option. I dialed my father's number. Hello? Franklin's voice was loud, cheerful. I could hear jazz music and the clinking of silverware in the background. Dad, it's Rowan, I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. My car broke down on the I-55. I'm stranded. It's freezing. I don't have money for a tow. Can you come get me? Or maybe send a truck? There was a pause. The jazz music seemed to get louder. Oh, Rowan, he sighed, the cheerfulness evaporating. I told you that car was a piece of junk. You should have maintained it better. I changed the oil, Dad. It's 15 years old. Please. I'm cold. We can't come right now, honey, he said, sounding mildly annoyed. We're at the tailor's. Layla is getting fitted for her gala dress. It's a custom silk import, and the seamstress is only available tonight. If we leave, we lose the appointment. I stared at the snow piling up on my windshield. Dad. I am stuck on the side of a highway in a blizzard. You're fitting a dress? Don't be dramatic, he snapped. Just call AAA. That's what responsible adults do. We'll see you at dinner on Sunday. Try to be on time for once. The line went dead. I looked at the phone. 3% battery. I didn't have AAA. I checked my bank app. $19. I put the phone in my pocket. I wrapped my scarf tighter around my face, zipped my thin coat up to my chin, and opened the car door. The wind hit me like a physical punch. I locked the car and started walking. The nearest exit was 2 miles away. I walked along the shoulder, trudging through sludge and gray snow. Semis roared past me, spraying me with freezing slush. My boots, cheap and worn out, soaked through within 5 minutes. My toes went numb. Then my fingers. My eyelashes froze together. I walked for 45 minutes. By the time I reached a gas station and warmed up enough to catch a bus, I looked like a swamp creature. My hair was matted with wet snow and grease. My face was red and raw. My scrubs were soaked to the knees. I arrived at my parents' house in Naperville an hour late for the family dinner they had insisted on. I didn't even have time to go home and change. I just wanted to be warm. I opened the front door, shivering violently. The house was warm. It smelled of roast beef and expensive perfume. Layla was standing in the foyer, modeling a silver silk gown that shimmered under the chandelier. Mom and Dad were clapping. They stopped when they saw me. I stood there, dripping dirty slush onto their marble floor. My teeth were chattering. My God, Rowan, Deidre said, her hand flying to her pearl necklace. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't ask how I survived the walk. She looked at the floor. "You're tracking mud everywhere," she said, her voice dripping with distaste. "And look at you. You look like a homeless person. Couldn't you have cleaned up?" "Layla is trying to have a moment here." Layla looked at me, her eyes wide and innocent. "Yeah, Ro. You're kind of ruining the vibe." I looked at them. The warmth of the house suddenly felt suffocating. I rasped, my throat raw. I walked 2 miles in the snow. "Well," Franklin said, turning back to Layla. "Next time, manage your assets better. Now, Layla, turn around, let me see the back of that dress. It's worth every penny." I stood there, invisible, dripping onto the marble, and realized that the cold outside was nothing compared to the chill in this room. 3 weeks after the car breakdown incident, I returned to my parents' house in Naperville. I wasn't there for a social visit. I was there because it was tax season, and I needed my old financial documents from the filing cabinet in my father's home office. It was a Sunday afternoon. The house was quiet. Mom and Layla were out getting manicures, a weekly ritual that cost more than my car insurance, and Dad was on the golf course. I let myself in with my key. The house was spotless, smelling of lemon polish and old money. I walked straight to the office, a mahogany-paneled room that always made me feel like I was entering a courtroom. I sat at Dad's massive oak desk and opened the bottom drawer where we kept the family files. I flipped through the folders: insurance, mortgage, investments. Then, my hand stopped. Stuck between 2 thick files was a manila folder that looked newer than the others. It was labeled in my father's precise, jagged handwriting, "Loan payoff final." I frowned. Dad had paid off the mortgage years ago. What loan was this? Curiosity, cold and sharp, pricked at the back of my neck. I knew I shouldn't look. I knew it was none of my business. But after the car incident, after the "manage your assets" comment, something in me snapped. I opened the folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A wire transfer confirmation from Chase Private Client Services. I read the details. Date, January 15, 2026. Recipient, Fed Loan Servicing. Beneficiary, Layla Collins. Amount, $350,000. Memo, education debt full settlement. The world stopped spinning. The air left the room. I stared at the number. $350,000. 350,000. My hand started to shake, not with cold this time, but with a violent, vibrating shock. That was Layla's entire medical school debt. Every cent of tuition. Every cent of living expenses. Every cent of the lifestyle loans she took out to pay for her luxury apartment during school. Gone. Wiped clean. Just like that. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling over the screen. I logged into my own loan servicer portal. The loading circle spun for an agonizing 5 seconds before my reality flashed on the screen in bold red numbers. Current principal, $348,900. Accrued interest, $12,400. Next payment due, $1,800. I couldn't breathe. We had graduated on the same day. We had the same degree. But as of 2 weeks ago, Layla was a free woman, starting her life at zero. I was a servant to a 6-figure debt that would take me 25 years to pay off. I did the math in my head. If I lived on rice and beans, never went on vacation, and worked extra shifts for the next 2 decades, I might be free by the time I was 50. Layla was free now. I looked around the room. The expensive leather chair, the golf trophies, the framed photos of Layla winning a 3rd-place ribbon in a dance recital. They had $350,000 lying around. And they had given it all to her. While I walked in the snow. The front door opened downstairs. I heard laughter. "Oh, Franklin, stop it." Mom's voice drifted up. "Layla, show your father your nails." They're ballet slipper pink, Daddy. Do you like them? Layla's voice chirped. They were home. I stood up. I didn't put the paper back. I held it in my hand like a weapon. I walked out of the office, down the hallway, and to the top of the grand staircase. They were in the foyer. Mom was hanging up her fur coat. Dad was admiring Layla's hands. They looked like a picture-perfect family from a magazine ad. Rowan? Mom looked up, her smile fading instantly. I didn't know you were coming today. You look pale. I walked down the stairs. One step at a time. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my mind was strangely, terrifyingly clear. What is this? I asked, holding up the paper. The silence in the foyer was absolute. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway. Franklin squinted at the paper in my hand. Then, his face hardened. He didn't look guilty. He looked annoyed, like he'd caught a maid snooping in the liquor cabinet. You were going through my desk? He asked, his voice low and dangerous. That is private financial information, Rowan. It's a receipt, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to keep it steady. For $350,000. You paid off Layla's loans. All of them. Layla blinked, looking from me to the paper. Wait, you guys did it already? I thought the transfer was taking a few more days. She clapped her hands, her face lighting up with genuine delight. Oh my God. Yay. I'm debt-free. She hugged Mom. Mom hugged her back, patting her hair. I stood there, watching them celebrate. I felt like I was bleeding out on the floor and they were discussing the carpet stains. What about me? I whispered. They broke the hug. Deidre turned to me, smoothing down her skirt. She had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable, but it wasn't shame. It was the discomfort of having to explain something complex to a slow child. Rowan, honey, she began, using her reasonable voice. Please don't make a scene. We discussed this at length. It was a strategic decision. Strategic? I laughed. It was a broken, jagged sound. You gave her the price of a house. You gave me nothing. How is that strategy? How is that fair? It's not about fair, Rowan, Franklin snapped, stepping forward. It's about practicality. Layla is going into private practice dermatology. Do you know what that requires? It requires image. It requires networking. She needs to live in a certain zip code, drive a certain car, join certain clubs. She cannot do that if she is saddled with debt payments. She has higher expenses, honey, Deidre added, nodding earnestly. Layla simply requires more to function. She needs a sanctuary. She needs her beauty sleep. You know how fragile she gets when she's stressed. I looked at Layla. She was nodding along, looking like the victim. It's true, Ro, she said, pouting. Do you know how much a membership at the Soho House costs? I have to meet potential investors there. It's work. Managing my brand is hard work. You don't have to worry about that. You work in trauma. She said the word trauma like it was a contagious disease. I work in trauma, I repeated slowly. I save lives. I literally restart hearts. And because I don't need a country club membership, I deserve to be in debt for the rest of my life? You've always been resourceful, Mom said, waving her hand dismissively. You're the strong one. The low-maintenance one. We knew you could handle the debt. It builds character. Layla would crumble under that kind of pressure. We're just leveling the playing field. Leveling the playing field? I shouted. The sound echoed off the high ceilings. You didn't level it. You built her a helicopter and told me to climb Everest barefoot. Lower your voice. Franklin roared. I will not be yelled at in my own house by a daughter I have supported for 27 years. Supported? I choked out. You haven't supported me since I was 18. I worked 3 jobs in undergrad. I took out loans for med school. I drove myself to the hospital when I had appendicitis because you were at Layla's tennis match. And now this? We paid for your car insurance last year. Dad countered, his face turning red. That was $1,200. Don't act like we give you nothing. $1,200, I said quietly. Versus $350,000. Do you hear yourself? Stop counting other people's money, Rowan, Deidre said coldly. It's unbecoming. It makes you look bitter. Bitter. That was the word. Not wronged. Not betrayed. Bitter. As if my anger was a character flaw, not a rational response to gross injustice. I looked at Layla. She was checking her phone, probably texting her friends the good news. She didn't care. She truly believed she deserved this money because she was Layla. Because she was pretty and soft and needed help. And I deserved nothing because I was capable. My competence was my punishment. Okay, I said. The anger suddenly drained away, replaced by a cold, heavy numbness. Okay. I understand now. Good, Franklin said, adjusting his cuffs. Now, let's put this behind us. Layla's debt-free celebration is in 3 weeks. We expect you to be happy for your sister. Can you do that? I looked at him. I looked at the father who had taught me to ride a bike by pushing me down a hill and telling me to figure it out. Happy, I said. Sure. I turned around and walked toward the door. I reached for the heavy brass doorknob. My hand was steady now. The shaking had stopped. Where are you going? Deidre called out. Dinner is in an hour. We're having pot roast. I didn't turn back. I'm not hungry. Rowan. Franklin's voice boomed. If you walk out that door right now, don't expect us to pay for that radiator repair you asked about. You want to be independent? Fine. Be independent. I froze. They thought they still had leverage. They thought the threat of withholding a few $100s would bring me to heel, just like it always had. Because I was poor. Because I was desperate. But they didn't understand. They had just shown me the ledger of my life. They had valued me at 0. And when you are valued at 0, you have nothing left to lose. I opened the door. The cold winter air rushed in, biting at my face. It felt clean. It felt honest. Keep the money for the radiator, Dad, I said, my voice flat. Put it in Layla's trust fund. She might need a new pair of shoes to recover from the stress of watching me leave. I slammed the door. I walked to my car, the same car that had died on the highway, now running thanks to a mechanic who had taken pity on me and let me pay in installments. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I didn't cry. I waited for the tears, but they didn't come. Instead, a strange clarity settled over me. For 27 years, I had been auditioning for the role of daughter. I had thought that if I was smart enough, hardworking enough, successful enough, they would finally applaud. I thought that if I didn't ask for anything, they would give me everything. I was wrong. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted an investment. Layla was a high-risk, high-reward stock, flashy, impressive to the neighbors, requiring constant infusion of capital. I was a savings bond, boring, reliable, stuffed in a drawer and forgotten. I pulled out my phone. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled to Mom. Block caller. I scrolled to Dad. Block caller. I scrolled to Layla. My finger hovered. Layla wasn't evil. She was just a parasite who had been convinced she was a butterfly. But a parasite kills the host just the same. I didn't block her. Not yet. I needed to know their moves. I needed to know when this celebration was happening. Because Dr. Julian Thorne, the terrifying head of neurology, had taught me one thing: information is ammunition. I started the car. The engine rattled, but it turned over. You're an orphan now, Rowan, I whispered to the empty car. You have no parents. You have no safety net. You have $348,000 of debt and a job that wants to kill you. I put the car in gear. Good, I said. Let's get to work. As I drove back to the city, the skyscrapers of Chicago rising like jagged teeth against the gray sky, I felt a shift in my chest. The sadness was hardening into something else. Something darker. Something hotter. My grief was turning into gasoline. And I was about to set my whole life on fire. If you're outraged on Rowan's behalf, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Also, comment below with the name of the city you are watching from. Let's see how far Rowan's story can travel. Every comment helps the algorithm push this video to more people. Thank you so much. The month following the discovery was the darkest of my life. I stopped going to Sunday dinners. I stopped answering the landline when they called to complain about my tantrum. I focused entirely on two things: keeping my patients alive and keeping myself alive. Both were proving difficult. On a Tuesday morning in February, I found an envelope taped to my apartment door. It was pink, a cheerful color for a death sentence. Notice of rent increase. Due to market adjustments and building renovations, your monthly rent will increase by $250 effective March 1st. $250. It might as well have been $1 million. I was already budgeting down to the penny. I was stealing toilet paper from the hospital staff bathroom. I was eating the free graham crackers in the patient nutrition room for dinner. I sat on my floor, the letter in my hand, and laughed. It was a hysterical, jagged sound. Market adjustments, I choked out. The renovations they mentioned consisted of painting the hallway a slightly different shade of beige. I had to make money. Fast. I started picking up moonlighting shifts, illegal under residency hour caps, but necessary for survival. I covered shifts for interns who wanted to go on dates or sleep. I sold my plasma twice a week at a center on the south side, sitting in a plastic chair for hours while a machine sucked the life out of me in exchange for $40. I was exhausted. My bones felt like lead pipes. My eyes were permanently red. But the real blow came at the hospital. Mr. Higgins, my favorite homeless patient, had been readmitted. Pneumonia again. His lungs were failing. I spent every spare minute at his bedside. He was the only person in the world who asked me how I was doing. You look like a ghost, Doc, he rasped one night, gripping my hand with his papery fingers. You letting the bastards grind you down? Just a little bit, Mr. Higgins, I whispered, adjusting his oxygen mask. Don't, he said, his eyes fierce. You're tough. You're the toughest little bird I've ever seen. Don't let them win. He died 2 hours later. I called the number listed in his chart, a niece in Ohio. He's gone, I told her gently. Oh, she said. There was the sound of a TV in the background. Well, we can't afford a funeral. The state will have to handle it. I stood there, holding the dead receiver. Mr. Higgins had died alone, and his family couldn't even be bothered to pretend they cared. I saw my future. If I failed. If I let the debt crush me. If I let my family define my worth. I would end up like Mr. Higgins. Dying in a charity bed, unmourned, discarded. Fear is a powerful motivator. But rage? Rage is nuclear energy. I wiped my eyes. No more tears. No more feeling sorry for myself. I walked out of the patient room and straight to the research lab. It was 11 p.m. My shift had ended 4 hours ago. I didn't care. I pulled up the data for the neurology study I had been tinkering with for months. It was a long shot. A theory about neuroplasticity in stroke victims using a specific combination of peptides. I had been too tired to work on it seriously. But now? Now I had nothing else. I put on a fresh pot of coffee. I cracked my knuckles. Okay, I said to the empty lab. Let's become undeniable. 3 weeks into my new regime of work until you pass out, I met the devil. His name was Dr. Julian Thorne. He was the chief of neurology, a man whose name was whispered in the corridors like a legend or a curse. He was tall, with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. He was famous for firing residents who didn't know the answer to a question within 3 seconds. I was in the lab at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. I was running a simulation on the computer, surrounded by stacks of paper cups and medical journals. I hadn't washed my hair in 3 days. I probably smelled like rubbing alcohol in desperation. Who was wasting my electricity? The voice was deep, smooth, and terrified me. I spun around. Dr. Thorne was standing in the doorway, wearing a black trench coat over his tuxedo. He had clearly just come from some high society event. Dr. Thorne, I stammered, standing up so fast I knocked over a stack of papers. I'm sorry. I'm Resident Collins. I was just running some data on the peptide sequence for. I didn't ask for your resume, he cut me off, walking into the room. He picked up one of my papers. He scanned it for 2 seconds, then dropped it back onto the desk with a look of disdain. This methodology is sloppy. You're not accounting for the cortisol variance. I am, I said, my defensive instincts kicking in. It's on page 4. The variance is adjusted using the Harrison algorithm. He paused. He looked at me. Really looked at me. His eyes swept over my stained scrubs, my messy hair, the dark circles under my eyes. You look like a disaster, Dr. Collins, he said. I'm working, I snapped. I was too tired to be polite. I don't have time to look pretty. One eyebrow went up. Ambition is good. Desperation smells. And you reek of it. With all due respect, sir, I said, clenching my fists. I am here at 3 a.m. because I have an idea that could change how we treat ischemic strokes. If I look desperate, it's because I care about the work. Unlike some people who care about the gala photos. It was a dig at Layla. I shouldn't have said it. Dr. Thorne stared at me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched. Show me, he said. You have 5 minutes. Impress me, or get out of my lab. I didn't hesitate. I pulled up my charts. I explained my theory. I spoke fast, my mind racing, connecting dots I hadn't realized were connected until that moment. I showed him the correlation between the peptide spikes and motor function recovery. When I finished, silence filled the room. Dr. Thorne didn't smile. He didn't clap. The sample size is too small, he said. And your control group is flawed. My heart sank. But, he continued, taking off his trench coat and draping it over a chair. The premise is sound. It's innovative. He looked at me again, this time with a glint of something dangerous in his eyes. Why are you doing this, Collins? This isn't residency work. This is fellowship-level research. I need money, I said bluntly. I have debt. A lot of it. And I need to prove that I'm not just spare parts. Dr. Thorne nodded slowly. Money and spite. 2 excellent motivators. Better than altruism. Altruism burns out. Spite burns forever. He rolled up the sleeves of his tuxedo shirt. Boot up the main server, he ordered. If we're going to fix your sloppy methodology, we're going to be here all night. That was how it started. No hug. No good job. Just work. Brutal, demanding, exhilarating work. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. By day, I was the exhausted intern, dodging Dr. Mercer's yelling and trying not to kill anyone. By night, I was Dr. Thorne's apprentice. He was a tyrant. He demanded perfection. He made me rewrite a single paragraph of our abstract 12 times until the cadence of the logic was flawless. But he was also the first person in my life who actually saw me. He didn't care about my clothes. He didn't care about my family name. He cared about my brain. Meanwhile, Layla was ramping up for her debt-free gala. She unblocked herself on my phone, or maybe I had unblocked her in a moment of weakness? No, she probably used Mom's phone to text me. She sent me photos of the venue. Look at the centerpieces, Ro. White orchids and gold leaf. It's going to be magical. Are you sure you can't come? Mom says you're being difficult. I didn't reply. I was busy looking at a microscope slide that contained the future of my career. The project, which Thorne had dubbed the Vanguard Protocol, was working. In our simulations, the recovery rate for stroke victims wasn't just improving, it was doubling. This is it, Thorne said one night, staring at the screen. It was 4 a.m. We were drinking stale coffee. This is the paper that gets you the cover of the New England Journal of Medicine. Is it enough for the grant? I asked. My voice was tight. The grant? Thorne scoffed. Collins, you're thinking too small. He turned to me. Have you heard of the Vanguard Fellowship? I stopped breathing. The Vanguard? That's a myth. It's the most prestigious neurological fellowship in the country. They only pick one candidate a year. Usually from Harvard or Hopkins. Usually, Thorne said, leaning back in his chair. The Vanguard Foundation funds high-risk, high-reward research. They pay for everything. Full lab funding. A living stipend of $80,000 a year. He paused, watching me closely. And, he added, they have a debt forgiveness clause. They wipe out all educational debt for their fellows. To ensure absolute focus on the science. My coffee cup shook in my hand. All of it? Every penny. But, the deadline was last month, I whispered. I sit on the board, Thorne said simply. I submitted your preliminary data 3 weeks ago under a blind review. They voted yesterday. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. It was cream-colored, with a gold wax seal. Congratulations, Dr. Collins. I stared at the envelope. I couldn't touch it. I was afraid it would dissolve if I touched it. I got it? You earned it, Thorne corrected. Unanimously. I took the envelope. I didn't open it. I just held it against my chest and closed my eyes. Tears, hot and fast, leaked out. Thank you, I choked out. Thank you. Don't thank me, Thorne said, standing up and putting on his coat. Thank your spite. He walked to the door, then stopped. By the way, he said casually. I received an invitation to a rather garish event this Saturday. A debt-free gala for a Dr. Layla Collins. Your sister, I presume? I stiffened. Yes. My parents are throwing it. I see. Thorne tapped his chin. It seems your parents enjoy public displays of financial power. They do, I said bitterly. Well, Thorne smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a shark smile. The Vanguard Foundation usually announces the fellow via a press release. But I think a live announcement would be more impactful. Don't you? He looked at me. Are you busy Saturday night, Rowan? I looked at the envelope. I looked at the text message from Layla about the gold leaf centerpieces. I thought about the ramen. I thought about the snow. I thought about Mr. Higgins. No, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. I'm free. Good, Thorne said. Wear something black. It's going to be a funeral. Saturday night arrived with a vengeance. I spent my last $40 on a haircut. I didn't buy a new dress. I went to a consignment shop and found a structured, black vintage dress that fit me like armor. It was severe, elegant, and looked like something a villain would wear to take over a corporation. Dr. Thorne picked me up in a black town car. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," I said. My hands weren't shaking. My heart wasn't racing. I felt calm. The calm of a sniper. We arrived at the Palmer House Hilton. The ballroom entrance was decked out in ridiculous excess. There was a red carpet. A literal red carpet. A banner hung over the entrance, "Congratulations Dr. Layla Collins, the future of medicine." Subtle, Thorne murmured as we stepped out of the car. We walked past the check-in table. The girl with the clipboard looked confused. "Dr. Thorne? You're not on the guest list, but..." "I'm here to pay my respects," Thorne said smoothly, breezing past her. I followed in his wake. The ballroom was packed. There were crystal chandeliers, a live jazz band, and champagne fountains. My parents had invited everyone, family, friends, hospital administrators, local politicians. It was a flex. A massive, expensive flex to show the world how successful their golden child was. I spotted them near the stage. Mom was wearing a gold sequined gown. Dad was in a tuxedo. Layla was in white, of course, looking like a bride. She was laughing, holding a glass of champagne, basking in the adoration of a circle of aunts and uncles. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Deidre. She had spotted me. "Rowan?" she hissed, grabbing my elbow and pulling me toward a pillar. "What are you doing here?" "I thought you were working." "I decided to come celebrate," I said calmly. "Hello, Mother." She looked me up and down. She frowned at my dress. "Well, at least you're not wearing scrubs." "But black?" "It's a celebration, not a wake." "And who is that man you came with?" "He looks familiar." "That's Dr. Thorne," I said. "My boss." Deidre's eyes went wide. "The Dr. Thorne? The chief of neurology?" "The same." Her face transformed instantly. The annoyance vanished, replaced by a hungry, social climber gleam. "Oh. Why didn't you say so?" "Franklin. Franklin, come here. The chief of neurology is here." She rushed off to get Dad. I stood there, watching them scurry. They thought Thorne was here to validate them. They thought his presence was the cherry on top of their perfect sundae. Thorne walked over to me, handing me a glass of sparkling water. "They're approaching," he noted. "Your father looks like he's about to try and sell me insurance." Franklin and Deidre descended on us. Layla trailed behind, looking confused. "Dr. Thorne." Franklin boomed, extending his hand. "What an honor." "I'm Franklin Collins. This is my wife, Deidre. And this is the star of the evening, Dr. Layla Collins." Thorne shook Franklin's hand briefly, then dropped it. He looked at Layla. "Congratulations on your solvency," Thorne said dryly. "Thank you." Layla beamed, unaware of the insult. "It's such a relief. Now I can focus on my patients without worrying about bills." "It's really about the patients, you know?" "I'm sure," Thorne said. "We're just so proud," Mom gushed. "We believe in giving our children the best start possible." "Children?" Thorne asked. "Plural?" "Well, yes," Mom faltered slightly. "Rowan is here too, of course. She's working hard. In the ER. Trauma builds character," Franklin added quickly. "It certainly does," Thorne said. He checked his watch. "Is it time for speeches soon?" "I hate to interrupt the flow, but I have a small announcement to make. Regarding the hospital's future." Franklin's eyes lit up. He clearly thought Thorne was going to offer Layla a job, or maybe publicly praise the family. "Oh, absolutely," Franklin said. "I was just about to go up. You can speak right after me." "This is wonderful." Franklin rushed to the stage. He tapped the microphone. The room went quiet. Ladies and gentlemen, Franklin announced, his voice booming. Thank you for coming to celebrate our daughter, Layla. I watched from the shadows. The trap was set. And they were walking right into it. The ballroom fell into a hushed anticipation as my father, Franklin, took center stage. He adjusted his tuxedo jacket, waiting for the spotlight to hit him just right. He looked every inch the benevolent patriarch, successful, generous, and completely delusional. I stood in the shadows near a marble pillar, my hand gripping my glass of sparkling water so hard my knuckles were white. Dr. Thorne stood beside me, relaxed, checking his cuffs. Patience, he whispered, barely moving his lips. Let them build the pedestal before we kick it over. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, Franklin began, his voice smooth as silk. Thank you for joining us on this momentous evening. He swept his hand toward Layla, who was standing to his left, looking demure and radiant in her white gown. Tonight, we celebrate not just financial freedom, but the promise of a brilliant career. We celebrate our daughter, Dr. Layla Collins. Polite applause rippled through the room. As parents, Franklin continued, placing a hand over his heart, our only job is to provide the wind beneath our children's wings. We recognized early on that Layla had a special light. A sensitivity. A need for nurturing. I felt bile rise in my throat. Nurturing. Is that what they called it? Medical school is a grueling journey, Franklin said, his voice dropping to a serious register. And the burden of debt can crush a young doctor's spirit before they even begin to heal others. We couldn't let that happen to Layla. We wanted her to start her practice with a clean slate, free to focus on her patients, free to serve the community without the shadow of loans hanging over her head. Here, here, shouted an uncle from the back. Franklin smiled. Some might say we spoil her. He chuckled, inviting the audience to laugh with him. They did. But we see it as an investment in the future of medicine. Layla, honey, come say a few words. Layla stepped up to the microphone. She wiped a tear from her eye. It was a perfect performance. Thank you, Daddy. Thank you, Mommy, she sniffled. I don't know what to say. I've worked so hard to get here. I almost laughed out loud. She worked hard? She studied, yes. But she never worried about rent. She never worried about groceries. She never walked 2 miles in a blizzard because she couldn't afford a tow truck. This gift, Layla continued, allows me to be the best doctor I can be. It's a privilege, I know. And I promise to pay it forward, someday. The crowd erupted in applause. People were dabbing their eyes. It was nauseating. They were buying it. They were buying the narrative of the perfect, supportive family and the deserving, angel-faced daughter. Franklin took the mic back. And now, he boomed, we have a special surprise. We are honored to have with us tonight a legend in the medical field. The chief of neurology at Chicago General, Dr. Julian Thorne. He gestured grandly toward where we were standing. Heads turned. The whispers started. Dr. Thorne? Why is he here? Thorne stepped out of the shadows. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He walked toward the stage with the predatory grace of a panther. The crowd parted for him instinctively. I followed him, stepping into the light. Deetra's smile faltered when she saw me trailing him. She made a small shooing motion with her hand, trying to signal me to stay back. I ignored her. I walked right up the stairs and stood next to Layla. Layla looked confused. Ro? What are you doing? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Thorne took the microphone from Franklin. He didn't shake Franklin's hand. He adjusted the stand, making it taller. Thank you, Mr. Collins, Thorne said. His voice was deep, commanding, and filled the room without effort. For that, illuminating speech. The room went dead silent. The tone was wrong. It wasn't congratulatory. It was surgical. You spoke of investing in the future of medicine, Thorne said, looking directly at Franklin. You spoke of removing burdens so that talent can flourish. I couldn't agree more. Franklin nodded, looking relieved. He thought he was being praised. However, Thorne continued, his voice hardening, it seems there has been a significant oversight in your investment portfolio. Thorne turned to the audience. I am not here to celebrate Dr. Layla Collins, he announced clearly. Gasps. A wine glass shattered somewhere in the back. I am here, Thorne said, pointing a long finger at me, for Dr. Rowan Collins. Franklin stepped forward, his face flushing red. Dr. Thorne, I think there's a misunderstanding. Silence, Thorne snapped. He didn't shout. He just projected authority so absolute that Franklin actually took a step back. Thorne turned back to the crowd. Most of you know Dr. Rowan Collins as the other sister, Thorne said. The quiet one. The one you didn't invite to your golf outings. The one whose achievements went unnoticed because she didn't demand your attention. He paused, letting the words sink in. I saw my mother clutching her pearls, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. 3 weeks ago, Thorne continued, Dr. Rowan Collins entered my lab at 3 a.m. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. She was wearing scrubs stained with other people's blood. She was desperate. Do you know why? He looked at my parents. Because while you were writing a check for $350,000 to clear one daughter's path, Thorne said, his voice dripping with ice, your other daughter was eating crackers for dinner and walking to work in the snow because you refused to help her with a tow truck. A collective gasp went through the room. Murmurs erupted. Is that true? No way. That's not true. Deidre cried out shrilly. We support both our girls. Rowan is just independent. Independence is a choice, Thorne countered. Abandonment is an action. You abandoned her. He turned back to me. His expression softened for the first time. But here is the thing about abandonment, Thorne said. It creates steel. While Dr. Layla was planning this party, Dr. Rowan was rewriting the protocol for ischemic stroke recovery. She developed a peptide sequence that is currently showing a 200% increase in motor function restoration in our trials. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the cream-colored envelope. The Vanguard Foundation, Thorne announced, holding it up, recognizes excellence. Not potential. Not image. Excellence. This morning, the board of directors voted unanimously to award the 2026 Vanguard Fellowship to Drive Rowan Collins. The room went silent again. The Vanguard. Everyone knew what it meant. It was the Nobel Prize of Residencies. This fellowship, Thorne said, looking at Layla, comes with a fully funded research lab. A stipend of $80,000 a year. He paused for effect. And, he said, his voice ringing out like a bell, a signing bonus specifically designated for debt relief. $400,000. To be paid immediately. The silence held for 1 second. 2 seconds. Then, pandemonium. Applause exploded. Not polite applause. Shocked, raucous, genuine applause. People were standing up. Dr. Mercer, my boss, was standing on a chair, clapping. I stood there, feeling the sound wash over me. I looked at Layla. She had dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the stage floor, soaking the hem of her white dress. She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the protagonist. She was the background character. I looked at my parents. They looked small. Franklin was pale, sweating. Deidre looked like she was about to faint. They realized what had just happened. Their narrative, the loving, fair parents, had been destroyed in front of the entire elite of Chicago. Thorne handed me the microphone. Your turn, Dr. Collins, he said. I took the mic. My hand was steady. I looked out at the crowd. I looked at the people who had ignored me for years. I looked at my parents, who were now looking at me with a mix of fear and desperate hope. Hope that I would be gracious. Hope that I would save face for them. "Thank you, Dr. Thorne," I said. My voice was clear. I turned to my parents. "Mom. Dad." They stepped forward, smiles trembling on their lips. "Rowan, honey," Mom whispered. "We're so proud." "Don't," I said. The microphone picked it up. The word cracked like a whip. "Don't say you're proud," I said. "You didn't build this. You didn't pay for this. You didn't support this." I pointed to the banner above us. "This party is for Layla. The debt you paid was for Layla. The love you gave was for Layla." I took a step closer to them. "I am debt-free tonight," I said. "But not because of you. I am debt-free in spite of you." I turned to Layla. "I hope you enjoyed the risotto, Layla," I said softly. "Because it was the last thing you'll ever get at my expense." I dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a loud thud that echoed through the speakers. I turned and walked off the stage. The walk from the stage to the exit felt like walking through a dream. The crowd parted for me like the Red Sea. Hands reached out to touch my arm, to offer congratulations. "Amazing work, Doctor. Incredible speech. Call me on Monday, we need to talk research." I ignored them all. I kept my eyes on the exit sign. Thorne walked beside me, his presence a shield. We were halfway to the doors when I heard the clicking of heels behind us. "Rowan. Wait." It was Layla. She was running, her white dress bunched up in her hands, stumbling in her heels. I stopped. I turned around. She caught up to us, breathless, her face streaked with mascara tears. "How could you?" she sobbed. "You ruined my night. Everyone is laughing at us. Mom is hyperventilating in the bathroom." I looked at her. Really looked at her. "I didn't ruin your night, Layla," I said. "I just told the truth." "But why here?" she wailed. "Why did you have to do it like this? You could have just told us privately. We would have been happy for you." "Would you?" I asked. "Would you have thrown me a party? Would you have bragged about me? Or would Mom have said, 'That's nice, honey, but don't overshadow Layla's moment'?" Layla froze. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Because she knew. She knew exactly what they would have said. "You took the money, Layla," I said. "You saw the check. You knew I was drowning in debt, and you took $350,000 without blinking. You didn't even offer to split it. You didn't ask Dad to help me. You just said, 'Yay, I'm debt-free.'" Layla stammered. I thought you were okay. You're always okay." "I wasn't okay," I said. My voice broke, just a little. "I was hungry. I was cold. I was alone. But you didn't see that, because you never looked." I stepped closer to her. "You're not a bad person, Layla. But you are a selfish one. And I'm done setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Rowan, please," she reached for my hand. "We're sisters. We're twins." I pulled my hand away. "We share DNA," I said. "We don't share a life. Not anymore." I turned back to the door. "Goodbye, Layla. Enjoy the party. You paid for it." I walked out of the ballroom, leaving her standing there in her ruined dress, crying under the banner that bore her name. The cool night air of Chicago hit me as we stepped out of the hotel. It felt amazing. Thorne signaled for the car. "That," he said, "was extremely satisfying." "I think I traumatized my mother," I said, leaning against the cold stone of the building. "She'll recover," Thorne shrugged. "Narcissists always do. They'll spin a new narrative. By tomorrow, They'll be telling people that your tough love upbringing was their master plan all along to make you a genius. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh this time. You're probably right. My phone buzzed. Dad, ungrateful brat. Don't bother coming home. Mom, how could you embarrass us like that? We gave you life. Dad, I'm cutting you out of the will. I showed the screen to Thorn. He raised an eyebrow. Cutting you out of the will? I thought the estate was reserved for Layla's higher expenses anyway. Good point. I typed a reply to the group chat. Dear Mom and Dad, I don't need your will. I have the Vanguard. I don't need your home. I'm moving to Boston for the fellowship. And I don't need your approval. I have my own. Do not contact me. If you show up at my hospital, I will have security remove you. Goodbye. I hit send. Then I blocked them. For real this time. No looking back. The town car pulled up. Thorn held the door open for me. Where to, Dr. Collins? He asked. The lab? I suggested. Thorn smiled. It's Saturday night, Rowan. You just won $400,000. We are going to get a steak. A very expensive steak. And you are paying. Deal, I said. 6 months later I sat in the first-class lounge at O'Hare Airport. My flight to Boston was boarding in an hour. I looked out at the tarmac. The snow was gone, replaced by the soft green of spring. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from Venmo. Layla Collins sent you $50. Memo, for the radiator. I'm sorry. I stared at it. $50. It was pathetic. It was too little, too late. But it was an acknowledgement. I didn't accept it. I didn't decline it. I just left it there. I was different now. The Vanguard Fellowship had changed everything. I wasn't just debt-free, I was respected. My research was being published next month. I had a new apartment waiting for me in Boston, a place with heat that worked and no roommates. I thought about Mr. Higgins. I wished he could see me now. I thought about the girl who ate ramen in the dark. She felt like a stranger. I took a sip of my champagne. It was crisp, cold, and tasted like victory. I had lost my family. But I had found myself. And looking at the balance sheet of my life, I knew I had come out ahead. I walked away from them that night and haven't answered their calls since. Did I take the revenge too far, or did they finally get exactly what they paid for? Thanks for listening to this story of redemption. If you enjoyed seeing justice served, smash that like button and subscribe for more daily drama. Would you have forgiven the parents? Let me know in the comments below.